Welcome to our Lectio podcast on this feast of Pentecost, celebrating the power of the Spirit of love to generate new life, new hope, new joy. By entering meditatively into the movements of the Sunday Gospel, our eyes are opened to a new seeing of God's living presence and action among us today. Be it in our own personal lives, in the workplace, in social activities, in political and global affairs. Through our encounter with the Word, we're invited to celebrate all that's good and beautiful in our lives and in our world, all that there is of God, and at the same time to recognize where and how we're being called to grow as children of the Father. We will take a few moments to quieten our minds and hearts so as to listen deeply to the gift of God's living Word in today's Gospel. God's food for us, His children, on this Pentecost Sunday is John chapter 20, verses 19 to 23. In the evening of the same day, the first day of the week, the doors were closed in the room where the disciples were for fear of the Jews. Jesus came and stood among them, and he said to them, "Peace be with you." And he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were filled with joy when they saw the Lord, and he said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father sent me, so am I sending you." After saying this, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. For those whose sins you forgive, they are forgiven. For those whose sins you retain, they are retained." The Gospel passage recalls the encounter between the risen Jesus and his disciples, languishing as they were behind the closed doors of fear, loss, grief, and guilt. Having experienced the victory of the Father's love that has raised him to new life, Jesus now draws near to his disheartened companions. Despite their shortcomings and failings, he longs to reassure them that they are still his friends, that he still believes in them, that he still loves them, and that he has work for them to do. Breathing his healing spirit into their troubled hearts, the disciples experience a new joy, gratitude, and zest for living and loving. Now that they have known their own need of mercy, they're ready to go out and bring the same mercy to others. One way of entering into this passage is by remembering a time when we found ourselves behind the closed doors of grief, failure, fear, dejection, or depression. Remember those who made their way behind those closed doors and stood with us, stayed with us, walked with us in tenderness, compassion, and mercy. Gradually they breathed new life into us, lifted our hearts and spirits, and awakened new belief in ourselves, and gave us confidence for our future. Remember how they came behind closed doors. No matter how difficult we tried to make it for them, they never gave up until they found their way to us. Remember how they greeted us from the heart, with great sincerity, understanding, and without judgment, saying, "Peace be with you." Remember how they were not afraid to be open and vulnerable with us about their own wounds, showing us their hands and side, and in doing so gave us new courage, new hope, new joy. We experienced the power of their love, healing, saving, blessing, and breathing new life into us. Sending us out humbly and yet confidently to make our way to others languishing behind closed doors, to be there for others as they had been there for us. Looking back now, we can recognize the presence and action of the risen Jesus coming to us behind the closed doors. In the coming days, let this meditation, this conversation between the passage and life experience, let it continue in the background as we go on our way, as we go about our ordinary, everyday life activities. Let us keep our eyes and ears open to what's going on around us and what's going on in the wider world. And we may well be surprised to find this gospel passage living again in all kinds of new circumstances. when the time is right, we may be moved to prayer, to thank the Father for the gift of the passage and the grace-filled memories that it has evoked. We can recall for the Father in our own words the experience of being behind closed doors, our gratitude for those who made their way to us, their peaceful presence, how they showed us the wounds in their hands and side, how they breathe new life into us, sending us out with new courage and confidence as bearers of mercy. Trusting in the Father's love, we let him know of any sorrow or regret in our hearts for the times when, because of fear, we built up walls and we closed doors, determined as we were to keep others out. Even when they did find a way through, our self-doubts and distrust resisted what they came to bring us. Lord, have mercy. We may also feel to pray a prayer of petition. We're conscious that there are people everywhere suffering behind closed doors, and often they're not far away from us. Awaken your Spirit in us, Father, that we might make our way to them, and through our understanding, compassion and care, they may rediscover belief in themselves and all that they have to offer to others. With a trusting heart, let the presence of God our Father now take over and draw us into a deeper prayer of silence and stillness. We're entering into a deep moment in a loving relationship where there's no longer any need to say anything or do anything. We simply look at God looking lovingly on us, believing in us, encouraging us, entrusting himself and his work to us. In the event of distraction, perhaps we might choose a word or phrase from the passage, for example, the phrase, "He breathed on them," and repeat this quietly in our own hearts to assist us on our journey. Our goal is to rest our hearts simply and receptively in the presence of God, and to stay with this deep prayer for as long as it is given to us. May our recognition of God's presence and work in our lives bear fruit in new and even more beautiful ways as we go on our way.